The Arctic Ocean is not a place meant for the living. It is a world of monochromatic hostility, where the air freezes the lungs and the water kills in less than 4 minutes. In the summer of 1942, this desolate expanse of the Barents Sea became the stage for one of the most profound systemic failures in the history of naval warfare. This is the story of Convoy PQ-17, a mission born of geopolitical necessity, but doomed by the very hierarchy sworn to protect it. By mid-1942, the Soviet Union was bleeding. The Wehrmacht had reached the gates of Stalingrad, and the survival of the Eastern Front depended on a lifeline of American and British supplies. Tanks, planes, fuel, and food had to travel the most dangerous route on Earth, the Murmansk Run. It was a journey that took merchant sailors through a narrow corridor between the crushing pack ice of the North Pole and the jagged German-occupied coast of Norway. To sail this route was to invite death, but to stop was to invite the collapse of the Allied cause. The convoy, designated PQ-17, was meant to be a statement of strength. It consisted of 35 merchant vessels carrying enough equipment to arm an entire army. The cargo included nearly 300 aircraft, over 400 tanks, and 4,000 vehicles. The total value of the shipment in modern currency would be measured in the billions. To ensure its arrival, the British Admiralty assembled the most formidable escort force ever seen in the Arctic, including destroyers, corvettes, and a heavy cover force of cruisers and battleships trailing behind. But in war, the most dangerous weapon is often the one that is never fired. Tucked away in the deep, cold fjords of Norway sat a ghost that haunted the dreams of the British Admiralty. This was the Tirpitz, the sister ship of the Bismarck and the most powerful battleship in Europe. To the British, the Tirpitz was more than a ship. It was a strategic nightmare. It was a fleet in being, a vessel whose mere existence forced the Royal Navy to keep its best assets locked in the North Sea, fearing a breakout that could sever the Atlantic lifeline. The tragedy of PQ-17 began not with a torpedo or a bomb, but with a series of decrypted messages and a profound failure of nerve at the highest level of command. In London, the First Sea Lord, Admiral Sir Dudley Pound, was a man under immense pressure. He was aging, suffering from an undiagnosed brain tumor, and haunted by the loss of the Prince of Wales and repulse to air power months earlier. He viewed the Arctic convoys with a mixture of duty and dread, convinced that the German surface fleet was waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. On July 4th, 1942, as the convoy celebrated Independence Day under the eerie glow of the midnight sun, the Admiralty received intelligence that the Tirpitz had left its moorings in Trondheim. The information was incomplete. They didn't know where the ship was heading, only that it was out. In the windowless rooms of the Admiralty, panic began to override protocol. Pound believed the heavy cover force of British cruisers was about to be intercepted and annihilated by the German behemoth. he made a decision that would haunt the Royal Navy for decades. At 9:11 p.m., a signal flashed across the radio waves to the convoy. It was short, cold, and devastating. The order was to scatter. The merchant ships were told to proceed to Soviet ports individually, while the heavily armed escort of destroyers and cruisers was ordered to withdraw at high speed to the west to intercept the phantom threat of the Tirpitz. In an instant, the 35 merchantmen were stripped of their shields and left naked in the middle of a wolf pack's hunting ground. The commanders on the ground were stunned. Commander Jack Broom, leading the destroyer escort, could not believe the order. He assumed the Admiralty had intelligence of a surface threat so close that his ships were in immediate danger of being overwhelmed. With a heavy heart, he signaled his destroyers to turn away. The merchant sailors watched in horror as their protectors vanished over the horizon, leaving them alone in a sea filled with U-boats and shadowed by the Luftwaffe. What followed was not a battle, but a massacre. The German command, realizing the British had abandoned their charges, couldn't believe their luck. They didn't even need the Tirpitz. The great battleship was actually ordered back to port shortly after it sailed, as Hitler was terrified of losing his prize vessel to an English carrier strike. The irony was bitter and absolute. The ship that caused the scatter was never even there, yet its shadow did more damage than its guns ever could have. For the next week, the Barents Sea became a slaughterhouse. Without the coordinated anti-aircraft fire of the destroyers, the merchant ships were sitting ducks for the Heinkel 111 torpedo bombers and Ju-88 dive bombers. The U-boats, led by aces who smelled blood in the water, moved in for the kill. One by one, the heavy-laden freighters were torn apart. The Christopher Newport was the first to go, followed by the William Hooper. The screams of the dying were swallowed by the wind, and the black oil of the sunken ships stained the pristine white ice floes. The systemic failure extended beyond the Admiralty's panic. It was a failure of the very concept of centralized command. Men thousands of miles away in London were making tactical decisions for a fleet they could not see, based on shadows they could not confirm. They had ignored the most basic tenet of naval warfare, that a convoy's only hope lies in its unity. By scattering, the ships had lost the ability to defend each other, and the Germans simply picked them off like cattle in a pen. Yet, amid the carnage, the human spirit flickered in the darkness. There were unsung heroes who refused to surrender to the inevitable. The crew of the small trawler HMS Ayrshire, led by Lieutenant Leo Gradwell, refused to simply run for it. Gradwell, a former lawyer in civilian life, gathered 3 merchant ships, the Ironclad, the Troubadour, and the Silver Sword, and led them into the thick of the pack ice. He knew the German planes wouldn't look for them there. To hide his ships, he ordered the crews to paint their hulls white and cover the decks with white bed sheets. For days, these 4 ships huddled in the frozen silence of the ice, their crews shivering and listening to the distant muffled thuds of their sister ships being blown out of the water. Gradwell's ingenuity saved those vessels and hundreds of lives. Meanwhile, on the open sea, other sailors fought back with whatever they had. Merchant gunners stayed at their posts on sinking decks, firing Lewis guns at screaming Stukas until the water reached their waists. These were men who had signed up to carry cargo, yet they were dying with the courage of seasoned warriors. The tragedy of the Peterston and the Pancras highlighted the sheer isolation of the disaster. Ships were hunted for days, their captains desperately trying to find a fog bank or a piece of ice to hide behind. The U-boats would surface and use their deck guns to save torpedoes, knowing no one was coming to help. The survivors who made it into lifeboats faced a different kind of horror. In the Arctic, the cold is a slow predator. Men watched their oar fingers turn black with frostbite, and many went mad from the relentless glare of the sun that never set. By the time the remnants of PQ-17 limped into the ports of Archangel and Murmansk, the scale of the catastrophe was clear. Of the 35 ships that had set out, only 11 had survived. 24 ships sat at the bottom of the ocean, along with 3,350 vehicles, 430 tanks, 210 bombers, and nearly 100,000 tons of coal and ammunition. It was the single greatest convoy defeat of the war, a blow so severe that the British suspended all Arctic convoys for months, leaving the Soviet Union to fight its most desperate battles without Western aid. The fallout was immediate and poisonous. Stalin, already suspicious of his Western allies, was convinced that the British had intentionally sacrificed the convoy or were simply too cowardly to fight. The relationship between Churchill and the Soviet leader reached a nadir, fueled by the bitter reports from the survivors who had seen their escorts vanish. The sailors themselves felt a sense of betrayal that would never truly heal. They had been led to the slaughter by men who prioritized the safety of steel over the lives of flesh and blood. Historically, the failure of PQ-17 serves as a grim case study in the dangers of the fleet-in-being doctrine. The Tirpitz didn't need to fire a single shell to win its greatest victory. It merely had to exist. It was a psychological weapon that paralyzed the British High Command, proving that in the theater of war, the perception of a threat can be more lethal than the threat itself. The Admiralty's obsession with the German capital ships blinded them to the reality of the situation on the waves. But the deeper tragedy lies in the mechanical coldness of the decision-making process. Admiral Pound's order to scatter was a calculated move intended to save the Royal Navy's precious cruisers from a perceived superior force. In the cold logic of naval attrition, a dozen merchant ships were worth less than a single heavy cruiser. But this logic failed to account for the human cost and the strategic blow to the alliance. It was a failure of imagination, a failure to trust the men on the front lines who were prepared to fight and die together. As the decades passed, The wrecks of PQ-17 became silent monuments at the bottom of the Barents Sea. They remain there today, encased in the frigid darkness, their holds still filled with the rusted tanks and planes that were meant to save a continent. The story of the Convoy is a reminder that in the grand tapestry of history, the smallest errors in judgment can lead to the most catastrophic ripples of suffering. It is a testament to the bravery of those who stayed, the tragedy of those who left, and the enduring cold of a sea that never forgets. In the final accounting, PQ-17 was not lost to the power of the German Navy, but to the frailty of human command. It was a disaster written in signals and ink before it was ever written in blood. The men who sailed into that white hell did so with a quiet, desperate courage that deserved better than the abandonment they received. Their legacy is one of endurance against impossible odds, and a reminder that even in the most organized systems of war, the individual is often the one left to pay the ultimate price for the mistakes of the powerful. The sun still reflects off the ice of the Barents Sea, and the wind still howls across the empty reaches where the convoy met its end. The ghosts of PQ-17 remain a shadow on the history of the Royal Navy, a stain that no amount of later victories could ever fully wash away. It stands as a warning to every commander who would lead from a distance, and every strategist who forgets that behind every dot on a map, there is a beating heart and a soul that expects to be defended. The sea is vast, and the ice is patient. The tragedy of PQ-17 was a moment where the world seemed to tilt toward darkness, where the logic of survival outweighed the duty of protection. We look back not just to count the losses, but to remember the faces of the men who looked out over the stern of their ships and saw their only hope sailing away into the mist. They are the true masters of this history, the ones who faced the wolves alone and whose names are now whispered by the Arctic wind. The great battleship Tirpitz would eventually be sunk by British bombers while sitting in a fjord, never having achieved the glory its creators envisioned. But its true victory had already been won in July 1942, when it broke the spirit of a convoy without ever seeing it. This is the ultimate irony of the North, that a ghost can sink a fleet, and that the fear of a battle can be far more destructive than the battle itself. The silence of the Arctic is the only eulogy they have left, a cold, eternal witness to a sacrifice that should never have been asked of them. As the curtain of history falls on the frozen graveyard of the Barents, we are left with the chilling realization that the most dangerous enemy is not always the one on the horizon. Sometimes the enemy is the fear in our own minds, the hesitation in our own hearts, and the distance between those who give the orders and those who must carry them out. PQ-17 remains a haunting echo of what happens when that distance becomes an unbridgeable chasm, leaving the brave to drown in the silence of the deep.
searching deep. Stalin's bitter fury that the Allies keep. A victory of terror without firing a shell. Oh, look at PQ-17, naked in the ice, paid for the pride and the strategic dice. The escorts are sailing away into the mist, leaving the brave to the execution list. Luftwaffe is screaming, the torpedoes run deep into the white air, where the sailors sleep. The Tirpitz is gone, rusted in the salt and mud, but its ghost won the battle without spilling its blood. The wind still whispers through the iron and the rust, an unbridgeable chasm turned into dust.